So hook wise, this is the SA280 size 10, and thread I'm using a Gills 100D thread. No name brand, it's just one that I buy in bulk, thanks to Paul Monaghan. So starting off point, lay a good base of thread, drop a super glue just to lock the material down. So the thread ended just at the hook point there, and then we're going to do a little bit of Blaine's Chockletts body wrap that he uses for his game changers. You don't need a huge amount. Cut off a little section, and you just, because it's got the two sides, double it over. Now depending on the size of the fly that you want to tie with this, just split it in half for the size 10. Obviously, well, actually half will work for a lot of sizes, but if you go really big with it, you do need to lengthen the fibre. And once you've cut it in half, you got two nice little palm ring sections. Once that's done, just make sure it's nicely locked in, bring a thread forward, and then palmer the body wrap forward, and make sure that the wraps sit up nice and tight against each other, because you want this pretty dense, because it's going to form the shape of the silicone fly's head. Obviously this is pretty much, well, called a lot of things, Flex Fleye, silicone, but it's kind of in between, I suppose. It's not a new style, definitely not a new style. I haven't invented anything new, but that's what it is. Wind it all the way to the hook eye, and at this point you're going to have to tie it off, because you're going to need to set the shape with silicone in a minute. So using a dog brush, just brush out the wrap, because it comes in these little clumps that you just need to break up with a brush. You can be pretty brutal with it because it's got a base of super glue there. It's not going to go anywhere. There we go. Brush back with your fingers. Then you're going to want to trim your baitfish shape of your head. I tend to go a little bit tighter on the bottom of the shank just to increase the hook gape, so you're not crowding the hook point with silicone and other materials. Now the head is quite soft anyway, so you're not going to have any problems with hookups in theory, but let's not tempt fate. What you need to do is you just keep trimming as if you're doing a game changer or a kinky muddler. I'm going for a slightly more sort of bullet shape on this, but as you can see, to get this fly to track well in the water, you want it to have quite a low center of gravity. So when you're trimming, not only to keep the hook gape open, you want to keep the majority of the material above the shank of the hook. So that if you look at it there, nice and uniform shape wise, because you're going to give this a first coat of silicone. So once you've got your basic shape, don't really need to trim the back of it. Once you've got your basic shape that you like, now you can go slightly rounder at the head for mullet flies or mullet imitators. This is just general baitfish, so I've gone for more of a bullet shape, and I've left majority of the material on top of the shank, kept the bottom nice and clear. Now basically what that does, it lowers the centre of gravity, so these SA 280s, they're quite a nice heavy hook, so you don't need too much lead in there, or you don't need lead in there to get it to keel, if you keep the materials up above the shank, because the hook will help keel it. So to put the first layer of silicone, now we're going to set the shape of this. Now again, you don't need to do it this way. I do find it handier to tie these in batches and do a couple of shapes of heads, leave it to dry for the first coat, because it just makes forming the fly later on a lot easier. Now I have an old flat paintbrush, as you can see it's been used many times. Bristles go kind of stiff, but it's great for applying a little pea of silicone. To do the silicone, you don't need a lot, because it's just to make the shape of the head and to hold this body wrap, get it to hold its shape, so that when you tie the fly and shape the rest of the fly around it, kind of presets what the fly will look like at the end of the tying process. So you don't need a lot, it's just a little pea, amount of a pea basically on the end of your flat brush, definitely a flat brush, not a round brush, and you always apply the first coat from the eye to the back, because if you try to apply it to the back and run it forward, it's going to snag and snarl and it looks nasty. So you just start at the eye, and just with light little strokes, just keep brushing it in. Again, like I said, this is just to set the shape of the actual head of your silicone fly. And again, like I say, this is remnants of a Flex Fleye, whatnot. I do various different silicone flies at the moment. On the smaller patterns, the likes of this works really well, having this core in the head. On the bigger patterns, you can either use a dowel, or there's something else that I can't share just now. We'll share at the moment, but I will share with you soon, that makes these much bigger, much lighter, much quicker to tie than doing it this way. So once you've got your shape, squeeze it a little bit flat, just run a finger over it. Now because there's very little bit of silicone on there, it actually dries very fast. Within 5-10 minutes that will be dry and ready for the next part of the tying. But to speed up things, and so you don't hear me waffle, I pre-prepared one right there. So again, it's the same hook. Now the silicone I'm using, I get it in a pet shop. It comes in little tubes. It is used in sealing aquariums, so the corners of aquariums, and when people make aquariums. Doesn't stink too bad. Obviously, being used in an aquarium, it's not going to leach into the water if you lose the fly, etc. So it's not going to harm any fish. Well, not as far as I know. I could be wrong there. But no issues with it so far. It's nice and light, then it dries quite fast as well. Although it's touch dry within 5 minutes, you do need to leave the fly 24 hours before you fish it. Otherwise you risk it going cloudy fairly quickly, and it doesn't reach its full strength. So yeah. Then, now depending on what you want to use for these little flies, craft fur works really well. At the moment I'm going to use some synthetic fibres. So this is some homemade SF blend with kinky fibre and angel hair that I've just blended together. Again, plenty of videos out there on blending these sort of things in, blending these to make your own. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just 2 wraps, just lock it in place and use your fingers, because this is going to form the belly of the fly. Use your fingers just to line up and move the fibres round the hook onto either side, like so. Then you're going to use the top. Now what I should have said is you tie it pretty much even, or probably 60%, 40% thereabouts, and then the same, 40% to the back, 60% forward, because you're going to fold this back on itself in a second. And again, use your top colour, just use your finger, your nail, just to shift that material down the sides. A couple of wraps to lock it in, like so. And then you're going to use your fingers or your tool or whatever, because you're going to want to hollow tie that, or push this back on itself. You can use a hollow pen, etc. You don't need to. And then you just, it's not a true hollow tie, it's more of a bullet tie. So you just wrap back over on top of itself, just to lock the fibre in there, especially with this gel spun because it's quite slippery. Drop a super glue. Need to get some more super glue because that's looking manky. Right, so once it's all brushed out backwards, you've got to bring all the material forwards. Okay, hold it in your hands, use your dog brush, brush it out so there's no tangles, and then just give it a bit of a squeeze so that it doesn't fold back on itself just yet, like so. Then you're going to apply your second coat of silicone. Now you can go a bit thicker here, so again, pea-sized bit of silicone. So the light's probably not the best, and you just put a decent coat of silicone on this, like this. Now this again, because it's got the first coat on there already, you don't have to worry about the body wrap fluffing and going all wrong, because it's got a nice thin layer holding it in place there and pre-shaping it. So that's fine. I'll just clean the brush off there. Break up I get about 30 to 40 flies out of a brush by cleaning it off after each time I apply silicone and using the dog brush on the bristles to break it up. So now that that first coat is on, you want to start pushing this down into that layer of silicone, like so, and use your brush just to press it down a little bit. Alright, so just keep moving it around, pressing the fibres down into that base coat of silicone. And then once you've got your base coat in there, put a very, very thin coat over the top to lock those fibres in place Now don't worry if there's a couple of stragglers that are escaping, and I'm pulling quite hard on these tail fibres, pulling the material into the silicone, forcing it through and out onto the brush. Because it's doubled over and locked in when you tied it in, you can put some serious pressure on these fibres before they would come out. There we go. So that's your basic shape there now. Just clean this brush off again. Now again, you're going to have to leave that to dry. Now you can put your eyes on at this point as well. I generally tend not to. I generally wait and use a bit of UV glue, which I'll show you there in a second, to attach them. So you see that lovely shape taking effect there. Right, so to add the eyes, we're going to use a bit of UV glue. Now, not much sticks to silicone, unfortunately, so super glue doesn't really work. So basically, make sure that it's nice and in line. Pop it down, hold it in place. You don't need much super glue. There we go. And now we do the other side. Okay, just a little bead, not too much, not too little, just the right amount. Just line them up, make sure they're even. Is that even? Yep, there we go. Press it down a touch. There we go. Looking good all around. Yep. There we go. Now we're going to add a little bit of gills. Again, it won't, it's quite hard to get marker pen to draw on silicone, but because it's a thin coat, there's still some of the fibres sticking out, so it does adhere to them. There we go. Not the most even drawing, but pretty sure that's going to do the job. Then it's a final coat of silicone. So again, this will be slightly thicker than the other coats. Again, using your brush. Now you want to start this silicone layer, you start at the back of the fly, so the final point, which needs to come past or in line with the bend of the hook to help with fouling. And using it like this, you get, oh, my brush just broke, a nice finish, a nice straight line at the back of the fly, which again is not necessarily needed, but it does look nicer. There we go. A little bit more on the eyes. We're ready to start. Good dollop in around the eyes. Nice amount there in around the eyes. Make sure that Teeth can't rip them out too easy. I've had my act together. I'd have some silicone eyes, like Jimmy from Retro Fly Studios, who helped me, like I said earlier, helped me a lot with these patterns. He uses silicone eyes on them, so teeth just goes right through and you can mend them quite easily. Right, so to smooth silicone, you can either use photo flue, dishing up liquid, spit on your finger, but I use silicone, glycerin. You'll find it in the baking section in any supermarket really. It's used for baking cakes and I think it's making soft icing, icing for cakes. Again, using a different brush from your brush that you used earlier on the silicone, dip it in the glycerin and you just, now this bristle I should have showed you before I wet it again. This brush is quite a soft brush, and you just lightly, very lightly, just smooth down the lumps in the silicone. Just very, very light touch, like so. Where's my other brush? Fell off. Brush fell off. So just take off some of the excess silicone so you don't gunk up the eye too badly. And then you'll just need to keep wiping off this brush with a bit of tissue paper, because silicone will come off onto it as well with the glycerin. As you're smoothing, it takes off a little bit of excess every time. And you just wipe it off, give it another dip in the glycerin. I've got mine in a little plastic shot glass. And you just have to keep smoothing it. Once you've got your shape, just very lightly go back. Now you don't want to slide this all the way back, you want to stop. It's just very light touches. And again, you'll see this glycerin forming little beads on top of the head. But don't worry about that, because once the silicone is dry, basically take a tissue and you wipe it off, run it under a tap, either. It just washes straight off. And that is the basis of your silicone fly. Obviously I'll take some photos and upload some photos of some dry ones that the glycerine has gone, so it doesn't look so lumpy. But with the silicone work, you just need to take time with it. Obviously don't rush it, but the glycerine works really well to smooth it out. Soft brush will brush. You can dip your finger in as well, take off some excess silicone or smooth it out if you need to. Just make sure that your finger is nicely coated in in glycerine, so it runs quite smoothly over the silicone. If it's sticking to the silicone, you ain't got enough on there. Don't worry if it runs into the materials, because like I say, it is water based. I think it's water based, washes out easy enough with water. It also stops the silicone sticking to your fingers, because some people may find they're allergic to silicone or have some sort of allergic reaction to silicone. I don't, so I'm able to use my fingers when I want to. And yeah, that's it. It can help as well just to leave the silicone to get like a little coating over the top again before you go back and give it another coating or another touch up, another smoothing over with a finger or a brush. But generally I find once is enough. and that is your silicone fly. Needs to dry. Put it back in. Anyways, thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully you enjoyed and learned something new. But this is one way of doing silicone, or a silicone fly. There is another one that uses an insert, kind of like Charlie's airhead, I suppose, but you can mess with shapes and different dowels, which I'll do another video of at some stage. And then there's another new way that I'm working on again in conjunction with Jimmy from Retrofly Studios, and it's especially good for my weedless Senko, which I'm going to hopefully do a video of as well soon, once I got those new the new technique down and dirty and quick and simple. But we'll leave that to dry. I'll take some nice photos and upload them with the video. But thanks for watching. Cheers.